Lazy Money Machine, where we show you the easy, no-nonsense way to financial and time freedom. Here are your hosts, Graham Brown and Eric Tenhaver.
I'm joined today by Cedric Waldburger, the handsome man with the bigger beard than I have on the right side of the screen. Welcome, Cedric, to the Lazy Money Machine.
No, thank you for having me.
Yeah, you're welcome. So I've put an announcement in the group already about who you are. Obviously, you have an interesting background. We've met before, and I've done another interview with you before, which was very nice. But I think maybe we can start off a little bit, Cedric, with explaining. Okay, who are you? Where are you from? You said you're in Switzerland. I don't know if you're from Switzerland. And then also maybe explain a little bit about what you do with your life and how you live your life.
Yeah, of course. So I'm Cedric. I'm turning 30 this summer. I was born and raised in Switzerland. I'm a Swiss citizen and resident. I discovered early on that my passion is building startups, especially in the technology sector, or nowadays I would even say like virtual companies. So companies that are completely detached from anything physical. So I'm not into real estate. I'm into social networks and a lot of blockchain companies. I built my first company when I was 14 and quickly got addicted to finding out how does this process work, to go from an idea that we had at the bar last night to 1 million. 1 million could mean $1 million, million packages shipped, 1 million users. And I like that so much that about 2 years ago now, I've decided to give up on having an apartment and got rid of most physical things in my life. I just kept 64 things that all fit into a backpack. And ever since then, I've been roaming the world in quest of providing value to the businesses that I co-founded and finding out more and more about this process of how to start a company.
Okay. And this first company that you started, what kind of company was that?
That was a media agency. I'm actually sitting at their office right now. I'm still an owner and board member. Right. It's been 15 years now since we started. And they do everything from advertising to digital marketing to building websites and flyers and brochures for smaller and medium companies.
Okay, but that was 14 when you were 14. So that company has been around for 16 years, right? And is that was that company also the one that sort of gave you your base income to live off? So for the first few years, I didn't have any income because we reinvested all the money that we generated into making this company bigger, buying offices, hiring more people. But I'd say for the last probably 8 years, that's been like one of the pillars of how of my income. Yeah, that one of the businesses that now makes enough money to support my lifestyle. Right. Okay. And right now you're living the life whereby you're traveling and you're roaming around a lot. When did you start at that? Is that something from recent times, or have you always done that? Have you always been a roamer? Have you always been traveling the world?
I first moved away from Switzerland when I was 21, so 9 years ago.
Right.
And ever since then, I've never lived in one single place for more than 6 months. Mm-hmm. But for the last 3 years, 4 years, it's been a lot more travel. It's been about 100 flights per year. So roughly like three to 5 days in the same place at once. And ever since I started doing that, it became more and more obvious that I don't need a flat or apartment anywhere in the world because I'm on the go most of the year anyway. So 2 years ago is when I finally decided to completely get rid of my apartment, my flat, and everything that didn't fit into my backpack.
Right. Yeah, we'll come to your backpack in a second. But this traveling that you're doing, is that always business related? So do you need to go around like this because you have your activities everywhere in the world? Or is it also partly because you choose destinations to go to just for fun or for the sake of it?
So it's a mix. So last year, I'd say it was probably 90% business travel, just because I'm currently working on 3 different companies, and unfortunately, they're in completely different parts of the world. One is in San Francisco, the other one is in Miami, and the third one is kind of virtual, but we have people all over Europe. And last year, it was all about pitching, fundraising, getting to know people in the right spaces, networking, and so on. And so sometimes it was quite hectic. Sometimes it was like 2 days in India, then 1 day in the States, 1 day in Australia, and then 2 days in Europe. And that was a bit exhausting. This year, I'm hoping that I can stay in one and the same place for about 5 to 10 days at the time, because I just feel I'm a lot more productive if I'm not constantly jet lagged and in airplanes. And this year, it's a lot more about execution. So it's not so much about going to conferences and presenting. This year, it's more about just meeting the team. And I'd say it's probably more of like 70-30 split this year. So 70% business travel, and then 30% flying somewhere because I don't have a home here and I have the weekend off, and I might as well go to a nice place if I have the weekend off.
Yes. Okay, so if you're on this kind of schedule, how do you find the time to create, I don't know, I know how you would call it, but like mind space or room to just basically sit back and reflect and sort of try to organize everything that's going on in your life? Because if I travel, and I don't travel as much, but if I do travel, I'm exhausted just by the fact that I'm on the road and I know that I have a lot of things to do. In those 3 weeks or 2 weeks or whenever it is, I hardly have any time to think about things. So how do you create time to reflect?
I think there's multiple things that I do. One is I try to build rituals. For example, I struggled with staying fit and eating healthy until I came up with a ritual. So now I work out every morning for about 20 minutes. No exceptions, no excuses. Anywhere and wherever I am, I just do bodyweight exercises. So I never have an excuse to say I didn't have a gym or anything. And that already helps to like make every day feel kind of like the same, even whether I'm home or if I'm in Yerevan or San Francisco, wherever. It always feels like this is my day. And the second thing that I do is every 90 days, I take a step back and I look at my life and I check in with myself and I ask myself, am I on the right track? I call it my 90-day review and preview process. And what I do is I've once sat down and I collected, or I've asked myself, if I had to define or explain my life in terms of different areas, which would those be? I came up with 12. There's stuff like friends, family, but also money, personal growth. And what I do at this 90-day check-in point is I sit down and I write a review looking back about those 12 areas in my life. And I write how I feel and I ask myself a bunch of questions like, who did I spend the most time with? What could I learn from them? And so on. And then I write a preview as well, where I say which 1 or 2 areas, where do I want to improve? Which experiments do I want to run? And then I run those. And 90 days later, I see the same text because I send it to me in an email to the future. So 90 days later, I get the same email and I see black on white what I wanted to change. And I check in with myself if I actually did that, if I came through. Okay.
That's a very nice system to use. If I see and hear how you live, you are very open to meeting new people, and you seem to be looking to meet a lot of new people. So is that a blessing or a curse for you?
I think it's definitely a blessing because I really enjoy being challenged by new people. In general, like putting myself into new environments and situations where I'm not totally in control. I always love that. I feel I grow a lot personally from being in this ever-changing environment. And then with people, I'm part of EO, which is Entrepreneurs Organization, which is a global organization of entrepreneurs, and you're part of that as well. That's how we originally connected, and I feel like everyone I meet there is just so interesting. So I constantly feel like a sponge collecting all kinds of experiences and ideas about other people's lives, which is super interesting. And in that sense, it's definitely a blessing that I'm currently exposed to so many new people in like 1 or 2 weeks.
Do people not see you as like, the lover on a holiday? This guy comes into my life and I see him once and then all of a sudden he's gone?
Maybe if people see me like that the first time they see me, they realize that I do come back like 2 months later because
that's right.
I constantly circle the globe. So if there is someone that I want to reconnect with, and that's the beauty of my lifestyle, is that, like, when I first lived in New York 8 years ago, for I think it was like 6 or 7 months at the time, when I flew home, I felt like, oh my gosh, I'm never going to see these people again. I've made so many new friends, and I will never have a chance to just see them again. Whereas now that I'm constantly circling the globe anyway, I always have a chance to reconnect with whoever I want to reconnect. There is a downside, which is I'm usually not invited to birthday parties anymore because no one expects me to be in town anyway.
Okay. That's a downside or an upside?
I was just going to say the upside of that is that I have to be proactive with who I want to meet, especially when I'm back home or here in Switzerland. But that also means I'm very conscious about who I spend time with.
Yes.
And so for most of the time, that's an upside for me.
Okay. Now, the other part of how you live is that since you are traveling a lot, you don't have a house. I think it was about a year ago, a bit longer, over a year ago, you started to reduce the items you had in your apartment. And then now you're at the point where you're constantly thinking about the things that you still possess. So can you tell the story behind why you started that? But also something you have explained to me before, which I thought was very interesting, is that there's a difference between just reducing to the minimum possible versus reducing to essentialism, right, as you call it, right? So reducing it to the things that you still feel that, okay, this is good, I will still want to carry this around because I need it. So maybe I took a little bit of your thunder away, but could you take us through that thought process and how that went in your life?
Yeah, sure. I think it started about 5 or 6 years ago when I first asked myself, how much stuff do I own? Which is such a simple question, but then I realized there's no simple answer. At least there wasn't for me. At the time, I already felt like I was living with not too many things, but I had no idea whether it was 100 or 500 or 1,000 things. And it came from an experience in a different job environment where I realized that people were chasing stuff, and it didn't ultimately make them happy. It was always like chasing after a new car, a new house, and whatever. I asked myself what makes me happy. I realized traveling and exposing myself to new environments and learning is what makes me happy. And then I asked myself, so how much stuff do I actually own? And it just started as an experiment. I went through my flat and I started collecting everything that I own and indexing it on a spreadsheet. And created this spreadsheet, and I think at the time I owned about 600 or 700 items. I made it public. Just because I was like, hey, by the way, this is how much stuff I own to a few friends. And then as soon as I had a number, it just became interesting to think about this a bit more and think about what is the essential set of things that I need to still function and enjoy my life the way I did back then, but just with less clutter. And that's when it started. And I started thinking about how can I consolidate all the pairs of shoes that I own into just 1 or 2 pairs. If I could only own one type of T-shirts, which type of T-shirt would I own? And so I really enjoy these thought experiments about what's the best unit of any, or what's the best model of any certain thing in my life. And that's how I got down to about 120 things. I think that was a process of probably a year or a year and a half. And I still had a flat at that point, so I still had furniture and I had cutlery and cups and plates. And then I decided to move out and just live with the stuff that fits into my backpack. And those happen to be 64 things. And since then, the list is still public. I still think about it every 90 days. I try to optimize. Right now, it's probably, I think I'm down to 55 items. And not everything in there will probably be essential to you. So what's important for me is I still need to be able to have fun with my life. So one thing that I carry around is a drone. Not because any of my companies need me to have a drone or because it's I need it to survive. It's just because it's fun for me to sometimes see the world from a different perspective. And it's probably one of my hobbies. And so I made room in my backpack to carry a drone with me. And that's what I mean by essential. It's not less is better necessarily. So it's not better if you just own 30 items or 60 or 100. For me, it's owning the essential set of things that provide a lot of value to you and don't take a lot of your time to maintain it.
Yeah, I can understand that. And if there might be people in this group that would like to make some first steps on reducing the stuff that they have in their lives. All of us, I think, have too many things in our lives. I have to admit that you were a big inspiration for me, and although I don't get rid of a lot of stuff in my life, I'm a lot more conscious now if I purchase something. The question, do I really need it, and how am I going to use it, and can I get the same fun with less things or less items? So that thought process is definitely now happening, but I'm not at the point where I'm going to reduce it to the level that you've done. But as you have inspired me, how could someone start with this process if they think maybe not going down to essentialism, but just say, look, I just want to make sure that I get more space in my life, less things, more experiences. What would you advise people? And I'm sure I'm not the first one asking you. I'm sure a lot of your friends have asked that as well.
Yeah. One way I think that is super easy to get started is just go through your wardrobe or your room where you have a lot of stuff and pick things up one by one and think about how you feel about them and ask yourself, have I used this within the last 90 days? And am I going to use this within the next 90 days? So that the time span covers 180 days, which is half a year, which for most of us includes all kinds of situations: warm days, cold days, fun activities, casual, informal, formal. And if you realize that you haven't used it in the last 3 months and you're probably not going to use it in the next 3 months, then just put it away for now. Don't throw it away, but put it in a bag or in a box. And then 90 days later, come back and see if you ever got anything out of that box. Because if you haven't, let's be honest, if you haven't used it 3 months later and you haven't used it the 3 months before that, then chances are really high you're not going to use it anymore, and you're probably not the one person that gets the most value from this. And then think about donating it or giving it away or selling it. And that's helped me, because giving stuff away right away was sometimes hard for me. Like, there was still emotional attachment, especially to stuff that I had owned over a long period of my life. But realizing 3 months later that I don't really need it and I never went back to pick it up gave me the conscious and peace to give it away and give it to someone who gets more value from it.
Right. Yeah, I can see that. And the part of this is also that I think, you're a young man, you're going to turn 30, but you're still very young. But you realize very early on in your life that you want to build your life around experiences, right? So is that something you would say that's typical of your generation, or even maybe the younger generation? Or is this a typical thing that you have realized earlier on, that you want to build your life around experiences, not so much the items you own?
I think I'm an extreme case, but I think there's a trend in my generation where I usually call it the Ferrari of our generation. So what a Ferrari or a nice piece of jewelry or a big, nice house meant to my parents' generation, I feel very often for my generation is a passport full of stamps. Mm-hmm. So someone who's well-traveled, it's a metaphor, but what I mean by that is like stories to tell and experiences to share seems to be the new, not so much status symbol, but the way we measure our lives in, which I think as long as it's not overdone or as long as life is not reduced to that, I think is a very healthy trend, because it's all about connecting with each other, generating memories and creating stuff creating moments that no one can take from us. Whereas stuff can always break. It takes time to be maintained. It can be stolen. And my experience, we just worry about stuff way too much.
Do you feel like you have less fear in your life because you've got less to lose?
Definitely. Yeah, because everything, the 64 items that I still own, or 55 by now, all of those can be stolen or burned down, or I can forget them somewhere. And I don't have any emotional attachment to them. And I like that thought, because I'm never worried about my stuff. I'm worried about people. I'm worried about relationships, but never stuff.
So what makes you afraid? Because for me, for instance, right, I've gotten less and less attached to, for instance, money and physical things, because I've lost some of those in a big way recently even, but also further in the past, that businesses that I lost, the money that I've lost, people that have cheated me. So I've sort of become hardened in the lessons of losing physical things or losing money value. But I still have fears of, what if my house would burn down? What would I have to do? Where would I have to live? For you, those things don't play because you don't have those physical things at least to worry about. So what does make you fearful?
Oh, definitely people.
Okay.
Either my own health or the health and lives of people that I love and care about.
Yes.
For me personally, cancer is a huge fear.
Okay.
I feel it's to the extent that I understand it, it's so random when and how it's going to hit you. Mm-hmm. And it's not very clear to me how you can protect yourself. And so just the fact that it's so uncontrollable, but it happens to such a large percentage of us, is something that I'm very afraid of.
Mm-hmm. Is this based on personal experiences or people nearby that you've lost or that are affected by this? Or?
To be honest, not really. No,
okay.
I think it's just the idea of it. And no one in my closer family has had a tragic experience with cancer.
Right.
But I mean, I see it in the media and my extended network of friends all the time because it's so common nowadays. So yeah, that's definitely something that I worry about.
So do you approach this in the Cedric way, whereby you research the hell out of it and you come up with a plan to minimize your risk, or not?
I try to. So one thing that I do is intermittent fasting.
Yeah. Because
I've seen a lot of correlation, maybe not causality, but correlation between that and not getting sick or not getting cancer.
Yeah. Which pattern do you use? Do you use the 18-hour, 6-hour pattern, or what do you do?
For me, I just only eat one meal per day.
Okay.
But it could be lunch or it could be dinner. Mostly it's almost 24 hours.
Oh, wow. And you do that? How often do you do that?
Oh, so you were gone for a second.
How often do you do that fasting?
Oh, constantly. I just usually only eat once per day.
Okay. And you have overcome the hunger feeling there, or how do you deal with that?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I allow myself to have little snacks if I get hungry, but most of the time I'm so involved with what I'm doing that I forget about eating anyway, and then I make sure I plan an hour off per day for that one meal, and ideally share it with my girlfriend or with a good friend or a business partner or someone I just met. Yeah, that's how so usually it doesn't even come up too often during the day anymore. I think it's like everything else, your body gets used to it.
Yeah. How do the people that are very close to you, maybe your family and maybe a loved one in your life, how do they deal with your want or your need to live this lifestyle?
So I think my family, my parents and my sister, they see that I'm happy and they support me, and I think they've learned that I like to do crazy experiments, and they just watch and see what happens. And then if something goes right or wrong, they're there to discuss in the aftermath. And then my girlfriend, I'm very lucky to have someone who also is able to travel or work from anywhere. Mm-hmm. So sometimes we're even on the road for a month together, and she travels with me or I travel with her, and we get to spend a lot of time together and kind of experience the world together while we work, which is something that I'm extremely grateful for.
Yeah.
And then there are other months where I'm so busy jumping from one conference to another, and I barely have time for my personal life anyway, where we don't see each other much. But it has a nice side effect because you realize how much you miss each other as well. Mm. And so that's a big plus of that as well. So we go from spending almost 16 or 24-hour days together over a long period of time to not spending any time together, which is a nice change, and it constantly challenges us as well. So in general, everyone I think is in peace with my lifestyle. Not everyone would like to have my lifestyle, especially not my parents and my sister. Mm-hmm. But they see that it makes me happy, and for me, that the lifestyle is a tool to get where I want to be and do what makes me happy.
Yeah.
And that's why I think they understand that I went to this like extreme version of it.
Have you changed your interactions with people? Do you feel that you're more present if you're giving your time to someone?
Yeah. So one thing I do is I try to be, and I'm not saying I always succeed, but I try to only do one thing at a time. So my head should always only be occupied by one thing. So if I have dinner with my parents, there's no phone, my laptop is shut off. But then I go back to work maybe at 10 p.m. and I work for another 2 hours. And that's when I'm just focused on work. Yes. So I try to be very on or off for each area of my life or for all the people that I meet.
Yeah.
And the other thing that's great about my lifestyle is that I think I see my parents more often than I did, and we're closer than when I had a place here. Because very often when I'm in Switzerland, I would stay with them for a night or two. And that gives you that extra hour at the end of the day where you're in this very intimate setting, you're at home, and you can just talk and share experiences.
Yeah.
Which has been very, very, a very, very good experience for me.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we had this experience. You stayed with me when you were in Jakarta, which it was this crazy idea whereby the request came, well, Cedric is going to come to Jakarta to do a talk, and we need somebody to host him. So sure, let him come here. But I also found that, and it makes the English people call it touch the flesh, right? So if you're closer to somebody and you've seen each other in person, and you've been, at this odd hour, we came home very late and we had an interview early in the morning, but we had breakfast together and you swam in my pool. I mean, it does create this unexpected kind of human interaction, which I thought was, really, really interesting. So.
Yeah, and it creates a deeper connection than you would get from just meeting for a coffee or beer.
Yeah, or a Skype call or just an interview, I think. Yeah. Okay, well, we'll move on to your business life. I had one last question about how you live your life, and that is basically, what do you consider, besides missing birthdays, what do you consider is the biggest downside of how you live? And how would you like to mitigate that? So
before my girlfriend and I met each other, I would always answer this question with, it's very hard to have a relationship or a romantic relationship while you travel so much. And I think it took me some time to find the one. But now that's not a downside anymore, or things work perfectly fine, even though I travel a fair bit. Other than that, honestly, I think it's maybe it is because of these 90-day check-ins with myself that I don't see any downside. Otherwise, I would correct it. Otherwise, I would travel less or be in one place more or spend more with a person or a group of people in my life. What I've seen last year after jumping from one time zone to another so many times is that it's very tough on my health over time. It's not that I got extremely sick, but just I feel exhausted without doing much sometimes. So that's why I've changed it this year, where I try to be in the one and same place for 5 to 10 days at the time. And that has really helped so far to feel extremely productive in these different places all over the world.
Yeah. Okay. So obviously, listening to your story, I mean, my first question is, isn't this an extremely expensive lifestyle? You're traveling all the time. You're always living in an accommodation that's not yours. So you either need to rent it or you need to stay with people. So isn't this very expensive for you?
So I think it is expensive, but it's not much more, or it's probably less expensive than my life the 2 years before when I still had an apartment, because then a lot of the business trips already had to happen anyway. Plus, I was paying rent for an apartment that I didn't really need. And of course, I don't make a lot of impulse purchases, so I'm saving that money. I save a lot of money that maybe other people spend on things. I spend a lot of money on flights and accommodation. But to be honest, living in Zurich is not cheap either. So I'm not even sure I'm spending more money on hotels than I spent on an apartment in Zurich when I still had one. But then flights are expensive. The way I go about it is very often I'm kind of flexible with my schedule. So if the flight the day before is cheaper, then I can usually fly a day earlier or a day later.
Yes.
And then I very often still fly economy.
Uh-huh.
And I just upgrade myself with miles. But I think on average, probably on the long distance flights, maybe every second or third one is in business. So it's really it's not crazy expensive. To be honest, I don't know the exact number, how much I spent on flights last year. I would guess it was probably like 30 to 40 grand.
Okay.
Which, if you put that in perspective to how much you're paying for rent in certain places in the world, it's a lot, but it's also not an insane amount of money.
Right. Okay. So before we go into your businesses that you run and where you make your money, have you ever, because a lot of people in this group are interested in doing property investing, right? As you know, I do that here. I do that in the UK. Graham, my partner, does that as well. Is that part of your portfolio, or is that part of what you would consider doing at some point? And have you ever thought about that?
So it's not part of my portfolio right now, to be honest.
Okay.
My portfolio, or the way I've invested my money, is almost 100% companies that I'm involved with. I'm looking to diversify maybe within the next 5 to 10 years, just to balance things out a bit more. And then I think property investment definitely is an option for me. I would probably try to do it in a way where it's completely automated. So I basically dedicate the money to that bucket, or like a bucket to that purpose, and I have someone manage it or a system manage it. And I wouldn't really want to deal with the day-to-day activity of that. So I'll probably come talk to you and Graham once the time comes.
Yeah, sure.
But I think it would be a great way to balance out, because right now I'm invested in a lot of like high risk, high reward kind of projects.
Okay.
And in the future, I probably want to diversify a bit more, and real estate seems a very safe long-term investment.
Okay. Can you? Does that also have to do with the stage that you're in your life? That you think like, look, first of all, you have hardly got anything to lose physically, so you don't need a mortgage that you have to pay. You have no car to pay for. You don't have kids that you need to pay for education for. You have a girlfriend that you need to buy a nice bouquet of flowers and a nice bottle of wine every once in a while. But is that the stage that you're in, so that because you're in a life phase that is stripped down of obligations for the most part, that you can also take all the money you have and throw it into these projects that you're talking about? Is that part of it, you think? Would that change if you're older, you think?
So short answer would be yes. I think that my life is not free from obligations, but there's a lot of pressure sometimes, but it's just from these companies. It's not based on things. It's mostly relationships and projects that where I have obligations. And honestly, so far it's just been, I've always just thought about like, this is the most fun and I want to make an impact, and then stuff always takes a bit longer and costs a bit more than you originally think it will. That's why I think everything is in the ventures right now. But as I said, over the next 5 to 10 years, I definitely want to balance that out a bit. And yeah, I think right now I basically only have to take care of myself. I mean, there's my family and my girlfriend, but for the most part, I don't have kids. So there's no people that really depend on me with their life right now. And I think once that changes, I kind of want to be a bit more balanced out and responsible, and also be able to provide for them in a way that's more safe in the long term than what I'm doing right now.
Okay. We'll go to the businesses in detail in a minute. Graham asked the following question. What are the typical criticisms or objections you hear when you talk about your lifestyle, and how do you answer them? So what are typical criticisms or objections you hear when you talk about your lifestyle, and how do you answer them?
Yeah, one thing that frequently comes up is like, if everyone flew as much as you, then like our world would be in a much, much worse state.
You're the polluter,
there's so many polluter, yeah. And to be honest, I haven't run the numbers, but I think just because I'm not buying things very often, like it's also like creating T-shirts and jewelry and new toys every few weeks and new clothing every few weeks. I mean, that also creates pollution. I have to say, I haven't run the numbers, so I'm not sure how bad a flight is versus a pair of jeans. But I just try to be conscious. And as I said, I'm trying to slow down. My goal is not to fly as much as possible or pollute as much as possible. My goal was or is to spend the time with the people and projects that I value the most and where I feel I can have the biggest impact. And just part of that is I have to get from point A to B sometimes. So that's one criticism. The other one that I often hear is, or people's first perception of me, because I'm very structured with my day and I have a lot of rituals, and often people think I'm a robot, or like that's a nickname that I often hear. How but where has spontaneity? Like, what's the word?
Yeah, spontaneity. Yeah, we need to ask Graham. I don't know how you pronounce it. How to be spontaneous.
Yeah. Are you ever spontaneous? Do you ever do stuff just for fun?
Yeah.
They don't realize that at the first point, at the first moment when they meet me. But when I talk more to them about why I'm doing things the way I do it, and that I really care about feelings inside of me, but also towards other people and vice versa, that usually helps loosen it up. But at first, like, people are often a bit of they're surprised, like, how much structure you can pack into a day.
Okay.
I'm Swiss in that way, like very disciplined, a lot of rituals and structure. And,
yeah. But sometimes, I mean, that's at least my experience, is that when I get stressed, the more structure I build into my day, for instance, in doing exercise, for instance, eating, for instance, spending time with my kids, if I structure more of that, then if all of a sudden the structure gets disrupted because there's a spontaneous event, the impact is also not that big because all the other days are basically planned and organized, right? So if you all of a sudden get the opportunity to go and, I don't know, fly a glider in the Himalayas, right? You could go away and do that and not have that big of an impact, I guess, on what you need to achieve in the day or in the week, right?
Totally, yeah.
Okay. So thanks, Graham, for the question. Let's get into your businesses and maybe if you'd like, maybe start with the newest ones that you're working on. And what I'm very interested in is the motivation to go into these spaces that you have chosen.
Sure. So for the last roughly 1.5 years, quick note, before that, I took some time off and I was more or less an angel investor in companies. I invested in 10 businesses, took board seats, coached those founders. And then 1.5 years ago, the itch became too big again and I wanted to get back in the driver's seat and build companies myself. As I said at the beginning, I'm super interested in digital companies or companies that are highly dependent on technology. And the 3 that I started or co-founded are, the first one is Zendesk, which is a productivity app. It allows you to manage all your tasks and collaborate with anyone in one place, kind of like an Asana that you can use with anyone. Then the second one is called Glimpse, and it's a computer vision analytics tool for bars and restaurants. We count, in bars, we put cameras in the ceiling and then we count how many transactions of what drink go over the counter. And we match that to your POS system so that we can tell you how many drinks were not properly rung up by your staff. And then the third company is in the blockchain space. It's called Dfinity. It's a new blockchain. It's the first proof of stake based system that's going live. And we're building kind of like a blockchain computer. So not only infrastructure to exchange tokens, but you may have heard of smart contracts on Ethereum. We're basically building a machine that's capable of like hundreds and 1,000 times more computation power for these contracts so that you can run applications on this fully distributed, decentralized hardware or infrastructure.
Right.
Yeah. So those are the 3 companies, 3 very different areas: productivity, computer vision, and blockchain. Okay.
And what triggers you to go and do that? What is the common thread in these companies that you get excited about? Because it's clear that you're very excited about these things. And also, if I follow you and if I read your articles and if I read the things your thoughts are over these different things, what is the driver? Why you want to get into these cutting edge kind of businesses? What's driving you?
So for me, it's always, I'm super excited about technology. Okay. So we use cutting edge technology in all these 3 projects, and that's what makes it so fun for me. I'm usually very good with the product and tech component of it. And then the second component, I think, is always the team. So my co-founders are always the ones that take care of business operations and driving the operations. Mm-hmm. So I think it's 2 things. One is content-wise, it's technology. It needs to be something new, something that I can sink my teeth into. And then on the other hand, having the right team, having the right co-founders that are also super excited about what we do. And I think third, I've asked myself this a lot recently because I'm turning 30 this summer, and I feel like I'm approaching the 10 most productive years of my life. And I've asked myself, what is it that I want to do with those 10 years? And I feel it's I would be really proud if 10 years from now I could look back and I could say I've done something that positively impacted the lives of millions of people.
Yes.
Now, Glimpse, the restaurant analytics one, maybe doesn't really fit in with that vision, but the other 2, I think, are very closely connected to that vision.
Yeah, I can understand that. We're having a good session today. We have another question from Tom. I'll read it to you. It's a bit. Let's see if I can make this a bit smaller because the overlay is a bit big. I don't know how I can do that. I'll quickly read it to you. And then we'll take the questions one by one, because Tom is a fantastic jazz-style musician. Lives in Japan. Hi, Eric, Cedric, enjoying the session. My questions. Where are you based for tax purposes? When you fly, how do you tend to use your time? What languages do you use? What things do you like to rent during some stays? Do you have insurance for any of your 55 things? Do you follow any particular diet besides the fasting? How do you manage your money? And what currencies do you get paid in, spend in, save in? Okay, so the questions are long. I'll remove Tom from the screen, but I'll take you through those questions. So basically, first, where are you based for tax purposes? Or you might not want to reveal it. I don't know.
No, all fine. I'm a Swiss resident, and I also make sure I touch ground more than 90 days per year in Switzerland. Even sometimes it's only just between flights. But most of my companies are also set up here or headquartered here in Switzerland, and I'm actively showing the Swiss state that I am a Swiss resident and I want to pay taxes here. So I think it's a good environment. I'm not an anarchist. I'm not trying to get away from paying taxes. Mm-hmm. But Switzerland is the center of my life, and that's where I pay taxes.
Okay, that might not be the most optimal structure financially for you, right? You could probably choose to get a residency elsewhere and then pay your taxes there. So why stick with Switzerland?
Honestly, so far I've looked into it maybe 3 or 4 times over the past few years, and the hassle just always outweighed the benefits. I feel that Switzerland is a very safe and secure place to live and to have your home base. I think if I had kids right now, I would also want them to at least partially grow up in Switzerland and get the education here.
Yes,
I felt it was a very good environment for me growing up, a lot of opportunities. That's kind of why I want to protect I don't want to give up on my rights as a Swiss resident so far.
Right. You got 2 Swiss passports, so
I do, yeah.
You're free to, and they're red, free to travel.
The only 2 things in my collection of 55 items that are not black yet are my 2 Swiss passports. Yeah, so I think the only one fun reason to move away at some point could be to have only black items and move to a country that has black passports. Yeah.
Which country is that?
I don't know. I think Germany has pretty dark ones, but they're kind of reddish. Black. Does the UK have black passports?
I don't think so. I think they're green, but not sure. So you'll have to go for a country. There's a marketing opportunity. Yeah. Found a country that has black passports, which is something. If we have a bit of time,
create a new company.
A new country, yeah. If we have enough time, we'll touch on that at the end because it's a new discussion that you've started. But Tom has been very active, so I want to try to answer his question. So when you fly, how do you tend to use your time?
So I also track every second of my life, and the way I think about it is I track what my mind is occupied with.
Quick time out. Tom says that Japan has black passports.
Perfect.
So you could become a Japanese citizen.
Japanese citizen, yeah. Although they are extremely strict, I think per year they only give citizenship to like 70 or 80 people.
Okay.
When I last checked, so that might be a long-term project.
Okay.
So how do I spend my time when I fly? The way I try to think about it is not where. Like I try to make it independent from where I am, whether I'm on an airplane or in an office or wherever. So if it's nighttime or if I feel I should be sleeping to adjust to a new time zone, I sleep on the plane.
Okay.
Otherwise, I mostly work or I read or I write or keep my mind occupied in another way.
Is it conscious planning for you, this travel? So, okay, I'm going to get to the airport this time. I have a 2-hour wait. I need to go through security. I need to wait in the lounge, or I need to wait somewhere. I need to get on the plane. So that block of time, do you think in advance how you're going to fill that?
So what I do for the time when I'm in security and basically when I can't work or really focus is I listen to podcasts.
Okay.
And audiobooks. That's how I keep my mind entertained whenever I'm not in front of a laptop, probably, or meeting with people.
Okay. And then on the plane, when you get on the plane, what is the most important thing you do there?
So I have this ritual. I take off my shoes, but I wear like thick socks, like my flight socks on top of it. I put in noise cancelling headphones, which are lifesavers. Like they make my life so much better. Because then I can really zone out and just focus. And then it depends. Like I'd be working on the laptop. I might be listening to a podcast. I might be writing, or I might dictate something. So really what I would do in the office, except for that for the most time I don't have internet.
Okay. What languages do you use? Well, we've tried, but Tom hasn't noticed it because we weren't live, but I've tried my German on Cedric, so I can just cope. But German is one of the languages. English, obviously, is one other one. So which other languages do you use?
So my mother tongue is Swiss German.
Okay.
It's quite different from German. And then the only other language that I could have a go at is French, because I've had like 10 years of formal education. And I was quite fluent in French probably like 10 years ago.
Okay.
Now I really have to go back to a French environment to pick it up again. Like if I'm in Paris for a few days, then it does come back. Other than that, it's just English and German is what I use day to day.
Okay. What things do you like to rent during your stays? So I guess Tom is meaning, what kind of accommodation do you usually use when you're staying somewhere?
Oh, okay. So for shorter visits, up to 2 nights, I usually use a hotel because it's easier to check in, check out, and just less hassle. For anything longer, I usually rent an apartment. Just because then I can cook, and I just have a bit more space, which I don't really need, but sometimes it's nice. And then aside from that, sometimes for like 1 or 2 nights, I stay at friends' or family's places.
Okay. And are there other things that you rent, like cars or transportation, or?
I mean, I do rent a car or a scooter or maybe ski equipment whenever I need it. But it doesn't. To be honest, it doesn't happen that often.
So if you go skiing, if you go skiing, how do you get the? I know you can rent the boots and the skis and the sticks, right? You can rent those and the helmet probably. But how do you rent the suit? So
when I go, it's so funny because people seem to have at least 2 sets of these. So I always find someone, usually the person that I go with, like they would have a separate set.
Okay.
So I've never actually had that problem that I didn't have any, or I had to rent clothes. So.
Okay. That's cool. Yeah, I'm always concerned about that, but you're right. I mean, and I experience that too, especially with winter clothes. So if we have families that are leaving Indonesia to go for a ski holiday, maybe in Japan or in Korea, they go and call around their friends, and there's always plenty of people, including us, who have bits and pieces, right? So they just actually, you're right. I mean, you don't need to buy it. You can just borrow it from anybody in your environment. Okay, so that was what did you rent? Do you have insurance for any of your 55 items?
No, not for my items. Well, am I correct? Maybe one of my. I'm not quite sure. Maybe some of the companies has insurance, and that might cover my laptop and work stuff. But I don't have any insurance for anything else. I just have health insurance.
Okay.
But I don't have any of my things insured.
Yeah, health insurance is so important. It's quite funny. I've done a class here for Indonesian young people younger than you. And it was funny. It's an initiative of a friend of mine. It's called Limitless Campus. And I taught, young people, the title was The Skills Not to Run Out of Money. I basically taught them about, okay, make your money, invest it wisely, etc. Spend less than you make, etc. The standard things of how you get by. But then the last thing was, the only insurance you ever need in your life is health insurance, because it's the only one that can bankrupt you. And that was really true. And they were like, why? If I get sick, my family pays for it. And that's how it works here, obviously, right? There's a big social setting whereby families are always there for each other, which I really like about Indonesia. But I mean, if you get, we spoke about it, if you get cancer, you need an insurance, otherwise you can't get treatment. So insurance, health insurance, not for the items. Tom, do you follow any particular diet besides the fasting?
Keto. Yeah, so I don't eat any carbs, no sugar, no bread, no pasta. I just eat vegetables and proteins, basically, or salads.
Right.
And that's something that, one thing I've realized, it doesn't make me tired, or it helps me have very constant and constant access to energy, because my body produces the same amount of energy per time unit. Whereas if I eat sugar, there's a spike, and then I usually feel it down afterwards, and it might also mess with my time zones, with my biorhythm. Whereas the keto diet has been really, really good for me. I feel really healthy following it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you can do keto and only eat once a day. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
But you would eat quite a significant amount of food then, I guess, or not really?
Probably like 1,500 calories.
Okay.
Like usually I like to have a good piece of meat, like half a chicken, and then just some fresh vegetables. Right. But I often eat when I'm here in Rapperswil, in Switzerland.
Right. And do you drink any coffee or tea or juices?
No, so that I've actually stopped a long time ago. I've only been drinking still water for the last 5 years maybe. But I've never even had coffee in my life. I may have had one cup when I was young, but I just never liked the idea of messing with my body's internal mechanics, so to say. Like I really like to push myself mentally and sometimes stay up for a very long time and get a lot of work done. But I feel for me, it's extremely important to feel when I'm tired, and then I go and get some sleep or rest. That's why I've given up on all kinds of like sugary drinks or milk or fruit juices. And also like still water, you can always get it. No matter where you are, you can always get still water. So there's one less decision that I need to make when I order drinks. Yes.
Maybe the last two questions we can combine. How do you manage your money, and what currency do you get paid in? You spend it in, or you save in? I know what this question came from, because both me and Graham have this vision that it's good and healthy to have different currencies. It doesn't actually matter that much which currencies you hold your money in, but it's always good to have your money spread in different currencies, so that if there is an issue with one currency, and I'm obviously in a very volatile currency here in the rupiah, right? So that's why it's good for me to balance that with another now very volatile currency, which is the pound sterling. But so what's your view on that? So how do you get paid? In what currency do you get paid? And what do you keep your money in?
Yeah. So I get paid, and most of the accounting is done in Swiss francs.
Okay.
And I feel that's a very stable currency, or it has been for the last decades. And I probably have about 50% of my fiat in Swiss francs and 50% in euros. Just because that's also the two currencies that I need the most. And then the other half of my net worth is probably in cryptocurrencies. I'm a big believer that cryptocurrencies will be big. It's a bit of a bet, but I've been following and investing since 2012, and I really believe in cryptocurrencies. And
have you ever taken any out again?
Yeah, what I've done is I've taken my initial investments out.
Okay.
And then I take something off the table every now and then. But I believe we're still very much at the beginning. I'm not saying Bitcoin will be the one or Ethereum will be the one, or I'm not even saying Dfinity will be the one big one that's going to go mainstream. But I believe there will be a cryptocurrency that will be a global currency, and it will make our lives so much easier. And I like the fact that it's not controlled by some random political organization or institution. And I think that's the reason behind it.
Yeah. Maybe we can touch a little bit about your new thought process. We have about 5 minutes left. I just replied to it. If you check out Cedric on Facebook, he posted an article, a video actually, which is a very nicely produced video about the thought of building a country in the blockchain. Now, for all the details, you can see the video. Maybe you can summarize your thought and why has this entered your mind? And do you actually think that this is something that could happen?
So it's been a thought experiment, and I'm not saying I'm going to build this or it needs to be built. I just like to have a discussion around it because I think it's an interesting topic.
Yeah.
So it's something that I've asked myself, what is the biggest thing that you could do with your life? Or it was when I was thinking about what am I going to do with the next 10 years? And I thought I want to do something big. And one of the big institutions or concepts in our lives are states or nation states or countries. And I feel that now that blockchain is becoming a lot more capable, there's going to be a lot more computation power. We have smart contracts and so on. I'm thinking the properties of the blockchain, that it's immutable, it's transparent, it's decentralized. You don't need to trust any one person. You can trust the system. I think that's perfect for something like the government. Mm-hmm. And so I started thinking about what would it take, or how would a state or a new country on the blockchain look like? And my current thoughts are that it would not be a traditional state that's attached to any geography or infrastructure, but it would be one level up. It would be something that exists in parallel to I call them infrastructure states, because I feel that's what our current states and nations are really good at. It's upkeeping infrastructure, defending them, building them, renewing them, and so on. But there's many things in our life that are more virtual than physical. One thing is education, but also large parts of the economy are virtual, or you can't touch them. And I feel for those parts, we should have a much, much smarter concept that we could build on the blockchain. And it could be completely controlled by smart contracts and logic that lives on the blockchain. Mm-hmm. And I feel some of transparency and the fact that we don't need to trust any one person, I think are some huge advantages of that. But then also the fact that we could build the first real, actual direct democracy on the blockchain, because it's so easy to interact with something like that. Like we could have our passport on our phones and participate in votes, like just by looking at our phone and pressing some buttons, or even better, not just choose between either yes or no in a certain vote, but be able to also submit proposals and have a pre-election on the top 3 or top 5 proposals. Because I feel that would give us a lot more balanced options than we have nowadays, even here in Switzerland. And Switzerland is often seen as a very good example for a direct democracy, but sometimes the votes are just between two very extreme sides of the coin, whereas I'd rather have something in the middle to choose from. And that's just not available. And I think it's because the administration, the overhead is so big to get there, to provide 5 different options. Whereas I feel if it was completely automated, then it would be completely possible and would make a lot of sense that we could choose from more than just 2 options.
Yeah, not to forget is that candidates won't have to spend a lot of money on campaigning, because the campaigning can be done on the platform that is created, right? So do you think that this is something that you're going to pursue very seriously in terms of trying to establish this?
I think I definitely want to, and if there's any of your listeners that are also interested in this idea, I think I just want to keep the conversation going for now.
Yeah.
I want to meet, that's why I did the video. I kind of wanted to get in touch with people and hear if there's anyone else that's excited about this idea or wants to explore further. I don't think I want to start building it right now, but I just want to keep exploring that idea and see what could be the upsides and downsides of this concept. Right. And what would it actually take to build it, and then take it from there.
Right. Okay. We have reached the full hour already. I thought, this blockchain thing will get definitely a tail, I think, in terms of, us reaching out to you and speaking about that. I want to, again, acknowledge you, Cedric, for making the time and being really present with me. I really felt that you're here and you're really spending an hour with me, conversing with me, and I really, really enjoyed that. And I think on top of that, it's the second time I do, let's say, like in an interview setting, something with you, and I've learned again new things from you. So I think there's a lot you have to offer to the world. So, please keep doing what you're doing. Very happy that you're part of this group now. So for everybody that is in the Lazy Money Machine Facebook group, you can reach out to Cedric because he's in there, and you can ask him questions or converse with him there if you like. For me, thank you for your time, Cedric. Hope to see you sometime soon in person, somewhere in the world. And otherwise, we'll keep the conversation going online or on Skype.
Yeah, thank you. Great questions. I've really enjoyed this hour, and I hope to see you guys you soon, and then other people from the group as well.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to The Lazy Money Machine. Find out more at lazymoneymachine.com.